Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Hello there, a very good morning. This is Newsline. We're coming to you live and direct from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. My name is Sonali Wanigabadge, and well, we have a very special guest in our studio. He will be joining us shortly. He's a chairman of the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka, Mr. Upul Jayasuriya. But before we get into a conversation with Mr. Jayasuriya, let's very briefly go through some of the headlines. Some of the most important things that happened yesterday was the Right to Information Bill being enacted. It was signed by the Speaker yesterday. The SLFP-CC decides stern action against errant MPs. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party's Central Committee, which met after some of its MPs conducted the Padayatra, decided to expel all those who had acted in contravention of the party's rules and regulations. This is one of the headlines of the Daily Mirror. Also on the Daily Mirror, the government to set up a new city in Hambantota. The government, it says, is to set up a new city in the proposed China-Sri Lanka industrial zone in the Hambantota district. Also a headline in the Daily Mirror newspaper. UPFA General Secretary and Minister Mahinda Amarweera said 5 senior members of the joint opposition requested Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe to sever ties with the SLFP. Well, these are some of the headlines. We will get into these shortly as well. In our studio this morning is Mr. Upul Jayasuriya. Let's say a very good morning to him. Good morning to you, Mr. Jayasuriya. Thanks a lot for joining us on today's show. Now, the draft bill on the right to information was signed by Speaker of the Parliament yesterday. This is a significant move in terms of freedom of information in Sri Lanka, which has been constitutionally enshrined, also strengthened by the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. Let's begin our discussion today with that.
Yes, it's obviously an important step, and I remember one of the countries in the region, India, has this right to information, and it's in force and it's taking place very effectively. And as far as some of the issues that were concerned in the previous regime, and there were so many fundamentalist applications that were filed, and they all had to fail because the obtaining of the information was not easy. So the media freedom is upheld by the present regime, and media in fact has a freedom. Up to now, I think nearly 1.5 years in power, there had been not a single incident of attack on the media personnel. Well, there will be criticism, and as much as the media has the right to criticize, everyone has a right to criticize the media as well. So that's different. But there have been no attack on any media personnel, and also information comes with that. Media cannot exist without information. So these are a major step forward with regard to the good governance and the rights of democracy to be re-established in this country.
But Mr. Jayasuriya, I think we could appreciate the fact that although the RTI has been now enacted, that by itself doesn't mean that the proper procedure can just take place tomorrow or the day after, because it calls for certain mechanisms, information officers to be appointed across government institutions in Sri Lanka. All this has to take time to be implemented, and people have to be aware that they can exercise their right to information. How do you see this happening in Sri Lanka, given the present context?
Well, we are still at the infancy. The child is just born. It can't walk or crawl immediately. It has to take its own time. But in the meantime, it is up to the government institutions to make things more transparent. It can make to happen. It can be made to happen from both sides. Taking note of the fact that this information bill is now enacted, I think all government officials, government departments, institutions should have no hesitation in making known their things, the way they act, the way they take decisions, and what criteria they adopt in taking such decisions. And as far as I can tell you, as far as the Board of Investment is concerned, we have no hesitation in calling any media personnel, any media institution, and then make it known as to how these decisions have been taken.
Right, but do you think that this will have a direct hit on corruption, on impending corruption? Do you think this act will be successful in holding accountable public officials to the people? How practical do you think it is? I mean, that is the ideal situation, but do you think it's practical?
Yes, we have to work for it. As I told you, we are still at the beginning. There may be, we have to envisage whatever the problems that may come across as we put this law into practice, and those problems have to be addressed at different times. The media can still talk about it, the media can still pinpoint these shortcomings there are, and they can be redressed as we go along. And some of these things to be redressed, if at all, can be done not necessarily by the change of the law, but by the will of the people, the will of the institutions, the will of the heads of institutions who are in charge of.
I come back to my initial question, which is, just because the Right to Information bill has been enacted, now it is an act, the people of Sri Lanka, the masses, people in the villages, in say Mulethiu, Mana, Hambantota, do they know what their rights are as per the act? They don't. So how do we bring about this nexus between the people and the act so that they get their information?
Let's start it from Colombo. The major part of the population and also the educated people, they are all in Colombo. All the institutions are based in Colombo. There are members of parliament and the local authorities, though they are dissolved at the moment. There are these civic leaders from different areas. So they can channel all these things through the Colombo based leaders that they have, and then start putting these things into practice. It can't happen just a guy in Mulethiu is going to know what the provisions of the Right to Information Bill is, but obviously there is some area member of parliament, and most of those people are fairly educated people. Right? So through the member of parliament, through education, which is a process that has to take place, and the civic leaders, political parties, not necessarily the ruling party, but they may be under focus, but the opposition parties are fairly active. Maybe they can give a rest to the walking along the streets, and then start sitting down and patiently looking at things as to what's happening, and then raise the issues if they have.
Okay. On that note, we go in for a short commercial break. We're in conversation with Chairman of the BOI of Sri Lanka, Mr. Upulajaya Surya. We'll be right back.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline. We're in conversation with the chairman of the BOI, Mr. Upulajaya Surya. He was also the former president of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Mr. Jayasuriya, the 12th to the 15th of this month will see the Law Asia Conference being hosted in Sri Lanka. Now, this is unprecedented. In fact, you are the chairman of the organizing committee as well. Tell us about the significance of us hosting this conference in Sri Lanka.
Well, firstly, Law Asia was first held in Philippines in 1966. So this is the golden jubilee that's held in Sri Lanka. In fact, I joined the executive committee of the Law Asia, of which I am the vice president now at the moment. That was in 2013, when I was the president of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Then I invited the Law Asia Executive Committee to hold its conference in Sri Lanka. The last one that we held held twice before. Firstly, it was in 1979. The chairman of the organizing committee was Dr. H.W. Jayawardena. And then in 1993, and now 23 years later, we are holding in Sri Lanka. So when I made the request to Law Asia Executive Committee, they decided in 2013, due to the situation that was prevailing at that time in the country, with invasions and encroachment on the independence of the judiciary, the rule of law is being completely hampered, and with so many things, the lawyers getting onto the road for the first time in the history of Sri Lanka, with the illegal impeachment of the then Chief Justice, or rather she was restrained from sitting in office and exercising her duties as the Chief Justice, that if they give that, they take that decision and the whole law issue in 2013 or 14, that they would be supporting the situation that prevailed in the country at that time, and therefore they did not want to be any part of that. Any part of that. So therefore they decided against it. But with the dawn of 2015, with a new regime, with new commitment to rule of law, with new advances being made to improve the independence of judiciary, a constitutional change that have been made, a constitutional council that have been put in place, with independent commissions that have been established, with the suitable persons with eminence and seniority been appointed to the superior courts of this country, the Supreme Court and also the Court of Appeal. There have been not a single questionable appointment that have been made by this regime since 2015, since they came into power. They thought now is the time to hold this conference in Sri Lanka, and then we were rewarded with this conference, which is now being held during these 3 days.
Right. Mr. Jayasuriya, since the coming into power of the incumbent government, do you see a positive change or a transformation in terms of the judiciary, in terms of the legal profession, as it were?
Yes, of course. Have you ever heard any decision that have been given against the ruling party, the sitting government that was there during the previous regime? Any single decision? If you can name one, please. But how many such decisions have been given within the last 1.5 years against the government? How many such decisions that the government have been turned down? How many laws have been turned down? So doesn't it demonstrate that there is some freedom that they never enjoyed before, now enjoyed by the judiciary? I mean, sometimes some of these decisions, judges are also not, they are not infallible. They are also human beings. They can make mistakes. But they have to have the freedom to decide what they think is right. So this is something that is sought for in the civil society, globally, internationally, not only locally. So this is something that we were yearning for, and now we find that it is coming into place. So there is definitely signs of improvement, but there is a lot more to be done. I must say that a lot more to be done. The Judicial Service Commission has to look sharp about firstly the promotion procedures, what we have in Sri Lanka. Not necessarily to keep on promoting judges just because they spend so many years in the position that they are holding. There should be some transparency, and also the test that could be applied here would be the test of strength of their judgments, whether these judgments can be sustained in the next level of maybe the appeal or revisions. If they are not turned down for glaring reasons,
right,
then such matters should be taken into consideration by the Judicial Service Commission, and they must make not only note of those judgments in giving promotions to such judges.
Mr. Jayasuriya, I'd like to bring your attention to the law's delays. This has been a massive impediment in our legal system. It has been ongoing for the past so many years, decades. If we take cases such as the assassination of veteran journalist Lasantha Wickrematunge, it's still pending. It's still pending. Has it been making progress? Also, the case of Ruggerite Wasim Tajuddin. Do you not see laws delays as a massive block to obtaining or achieving justice in Sri Lanka?
There are definitely laws delays. In fact, this is one of the topics that will be taken up for discussion at the conference.
Right.
But the two examples that you just mentioned, Wasim
Tajuddin and
Mr. Lasantha Wickrematunge, my dear friend, he was. This is not laws delays. This was the intended action that was taken by the then regime to destroy the evidence, whatever was there, to hide and keep away the culprits from the process of law, and that was done by the previous regime, and that is awful. And it was the best time to investigate and then unearth a mystery like that would be immediately after the incident. Now all these incidents have been gone into, they are rebuilding the files, all the evidence that was there in the files have also been destroyed. They are rebuilding the files to get at the perpetrators. Now it was reported in the papers that the senior state counsel who appeared in court had informed court that there have been many calls made in the night, the dead of the night of the death of Wasim Tajuddin from the palace of the president. Now this is shocking. Now just imagine how much effort had to be made to obtain such evidence. Do you know how much evidence had been, how much effort has been made? The telecommunication companies that are involved in this, I think they have invested more than 100 million rupees to get the software, the hardware. They have assigned people separately for this particular job. There are independent auditing going on, watching this, monitoring the whole process of the scientific process of rebuilding this information that have been now unearthed, but somewhere there in the system. So there is huge amount of, but if it was within the last 1 month or so, getting all this information is just at your fingertips. So this is where the problem is. Sometimes some of the people are also a little impatient, as anyone would be. It is quite reasonable and expected. And so why some of these investigations are taking time? It is taking time. There is no question about it. It is taking time because rebuilding a case when all the evidence has been destroyed, including documentation, the telephone conversation, the proof of telephone communication, they all have to be rebuilt. You have to start, some of the witnesses have been moved away, they have been sent abroad, they are not here. So it's a huge exercise. So we must commend the officers who are doing these investigations for bringing these investigations up to this stage. So it's not the laws delays that apply there, but I do concede that there are laws delays. That can happen due to the, I mean, I'm not taking the blame away from the lawyers. Lawyers are also maybe to take some part of the blame. Sometimes the judges are overworked. Now at the Supreme Court we find there are 3 benches sitting every day. It never happened in the past. For a short time it was happening during the time of Dr. Shirani Bandaranaike when she was the Chief Justice. But again the present Chief Justice has brought that system again. There are 3 benches. Usually what happens is, if a matter is taken up on one day, if it goes down, then it will go down to a date another 6 months time. But that period of 6 months, or maybe it has been now made shorter. Right. So even the judges are also human beings. So how many matters that they can take up for a day? Maybe 2 or 3 matters for full argument. If they are not concluded with a shortcut, maybe some agreement or some settlement between the 2 parties. So just imagine the judges, for them to go into the matter with all the necessary concentration. You can't keep on changing one to another and all that. You can't hear 10 cases and then finish them all. But there are about nearly few thousands of cases. So at least if they can finish all the current cases and then little by little go into the past. But even if that takes time, I think they must study this and then make recommendation to through the Judicial Service Commission to the President if necessary. The Constitution also provides appointing temporary judges to the Court of Appeal. Even such steps can be taken.
Mr. Jayasuriya, do you believe, and this is a very serious question, do you believe that the culprits are being protected?
Not at all. This is like in Sinhalese or in Buddhism, there is a verse to say, Lipagini molavana tek diya saliye sapayak yai kakuluwa diya kediye. That means the crab is in the water, thinking that he's back in the waters and he's playing around, but the water is heating up. That is what is happening at the moment. Have you ever heard of an incident where a person has been just taken into custody after a complaint during this period of say 1.5 years? From what I know, when a complaint is being made, it is gone into with meticulously it is gone into, and all the necessary evidence is being collected and then produced in court. B reports filed, not one B report. I think in Tajuddin's case they had filed more than 25 B reports. Still no arrests have been made. They are still doing that. Have you ever heard an incident where any single person who has been taken into or for questioning, or even brought in there for questioning, have been threatened or assaulted or tortured and then obtained some statements? Never. So we must also compliment these officers wherever necessary, where they deserve to be complimented. Here is such a situation where some people with some exposure, experience are there going into these things. It takes time. It takes time and effort, and then they have so many in number. Sometimes they may even lose track of the importance of some of these. They may be taking even small incidents. One may be asking even a member of public can ask, what is this incident that you are inquiring into? A few hundred thousands of rupees or few millions. Or sometimes it may become, sometimes one might say that I think the allegation with regard to Krish transaction was some 70 million rupees has been taken from the company to somebody's personal account. One might say 70 million is small compared with what has been going on. Well, for some it may be small, for some it is big. So, but every investigation, from what I understand, as a lawyer I can tell you, is gone into with care and diligence.
Thank you very much. So you conclude with an optimistic note on the fact that there is less corruption than before, and that we can be hopeful for the future.
Definitely, we can be hopeful for the future, and wherever the corruption is taking place, the complaints are being made to the institutions that may be relevant, even the Bribery Commission. And I must also pay a compliment to the Bribery Commission. They are also doing a huge job with so many files, with limited resources. Again, the resources have been made even greater than what it was, but still it may not be enough. But they are doing a good job. You must compliment them. And
on that note, we wrap up this edition of Newsline. Of course, we'd like to invite legal professionals to join in the Law Asia Conference, which will be hosted in Sri Lanka this time. It will be held from the 12th to the 15th of this month in Colombo. And Newsfirst is the media sponsor of the event. Thank you very much, Mr. Puljaya Surya, for joining us on Newsline.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you again, same time, same place, tomorrow.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.